Alright guys, so this is a Dasa 1100 10 mil stroker we got in that we're rebuilding. So this is one of those terror tales, I guess you can say. This guy bought this ski, supposedly had 2 hours on it. It wasn't running right. He called me up. He told me who the seller was. He first had jet pump issues. I fixed the jet pump for him. I told him, after he told me who the seller was, that I'd recommend he pull the head off and check it. Pulled the head off. The one piston was badly detonated. Hold on. Sorry about that. So here's the one piston that was all detonated. So he brought it down so we could take it apart. The other piston, you can see when they installed it, the ring bent over, and they ended up running it that way, surprisingly. I guess they didn't know it. So you can see, let me get a light, just a little easier to spot. If you look down in this hole over here, you can see the damage. This sleeve is toast. And it actually damaged the aluminum, so we're going to have to put a slightly larger sleeve in it. And then this sleeve is also damaged here. You can see it's chipped, broken, and this motor had, you know, over 100 hours on it. You know, the pistons are sloppy. The crank was shot. We had to rebuild the crank. So I'm going to go through all the work on this, but, you know, this year has been a really bad year for, you know, with Corona and all that stuff. You know, the people got money and they ended up buying a whole bunch of toys. And for some reason this year I've seen more busted up stuff coming to me where people buy stuff that was supposedly running. I'm going to do a video, you know, what to look for on a ski when you're buying it. And honestly, you should always ride it first. So, but, you know, this guy bought a really, really nice freestyle ski that the carbs were shot, the reeds were shot, the crank was shot, the sleeves were shot, the pistons were shot, dome shot, the crank, sorry, not the crank, the pump was cracked. So, you know, brand new ski, basically a total rebuild. Well, what he thought was a brand new ski ended up costing him a small fortune. So let's get started on this motor. Just want to give you guys a little backstory on it. Alright, so here we go. We got it set in the boring bar. So the one damaged sleeve from the ring, we're going to machine it paper thin and break it out. The other sleeve will end up heating up and pulling out. So let's get started. First thing we got to do is set the mic. So our first cut's gonna be 3-inch 725 thousandths. There's 3-inch 725. All right, let's open her up to that. go. See, 3725. Take this out of high gear. But just to show you guys, this is the last cut. You can start to see the sleeves getting thin. So after this one, the sleeve should break out pretty easily. Now you can actually see the cracks that were in this sleeve. So now this sleeve is paper thin. So all we're going to do is crack her out. Done was, so now we'll go here. Alright, I gotta put the GoPro camera down. Alright, so here we go. So this is the sleeve that we pulled out that's just got the damage over here. So these are the replacement sleeves we're going to put in. So if you notice, so there's this step. So this section of the sleeve is the same diameter. This is slightly oversized, which is going to help for the damage in the aluminum from that one pulled sleeve. You know, if not, what I would have ended up having to do. So there's it's hard to see, there's a big gouge over here from the damage. What I would end up having to do is then weld it, remachine it. It's a royal pain. So by being able to go with a slightly oversized sleeve, we bore the aluminum and set it in. Now this is one of the most precise things you end up having to do, because when you're boring a cylinder, you know, you normally bore it to the size of the piston and you hone the clearance. So, you know, depending on, you know, the piston used, you know, the clearance could be anywhere from 3 thousandths to 7 thousandths. So, you know, you bore it to the piston size and hone the rest. So you have a little wiggle room. You know, if you end up one over or one under, it's not really a big deal. With sleeves, you know, ideal is you machine the aluminum block around 2 thousandths smaller than the sleeve. Then you heat the cylinder up, the aluminum expands more than the cast iron, and you can install the sleeve. If you don't install it with enough squeeze, the liner can actually move. If you install it with too much, it's not going to come out. So, you know, it's really the hardest thing to do when doing these engines. So, you know, and that's where you'll hear people talk about sleeves dropping and stuff like that. I'll tag in a video of us installing sleeves on a different motor, showing the fixture I have, just because I didn't happen to record this one. But gives you an idea. Let's set this up and start machining it. First cut in the aluminum. The smoke is actually something called alumina lube. Just so you can see, they're both bored. Two thousandths. Dead nuts on the money. Time to heat her up and put the sleeves in. So for starters, before we get started, so I used a set of cases that was bored oversized. 2 threaded rods that are on the same distance as the crank. Then I have 2 top plates and 2 nuts. So what ends up happening is when we drop these sleeves in hot, as they cool, they can actually pop up from the top lip. So by clamping it, it makes sure that doesn't happen, so that way you don't have a sleeve drop, because after we put this all together, we're going to have to deck the head. If there's still a little gap after you deck the head, when the motor heats up the first time, the sleeve drops and you end up with a head gasket or O-ring failure. Another thing, personally, I don't put my sleeves in the freezer or anything like that. If anything, I'll actually heat them up. I find if you put them in the freezer, although it might work, sometimes you end up with a flash heating where it just locks instantly and then you have to heat it all up together anyway. You know, the reason these cylinders work is aluminum expands significantly more than cast iron. Therefore, you know, when you heat it up to 500 degrees, the cast iron expands, you know, 3 thousandths and the aluminum expands 7 or 8. Therefore, the 2,000th interference fit that there is goes away and the sleeve just comes out. So let me bring that hot cylinder over here. Let's drop the sleeves in and clamp her all down. So now I will drop both sleeves in. We will align them as best as we can. There we go. Clamping this is a very, very important step that some people miss. Now, you might get away with not clamping it 1 or 2 times, but if you don't, eventually it's going to bite you, where you end up with a sleeve drop, which there's nothing worse than, you know, going out to the lake with your brand new setup, and the second you fire it up, you end up with, you know, a head gasket failure. Now we just got to let that cool, and I'll show you when we pop it off. Alright, so here we go. The Dasa 1100 cylinder. Got new sleeves in it. It's all remachined, all reported. So, time to start honing it, getting her back together. Now another thing to know when you're honing, so the hone I'm using is a counterbalanced manual feed hone, so I'm using my hand to push it up and down, but it's counterbalanced, so I can show you here, like I can basically use a finger, it's just because this, just because that's so loose, it was just catching on the stone. But with it being counterbalanced, as you can see, like I can use one finger to move this up and down. But when you're using a hand feed hone, even an automatic hone that isn't actually measuring as it's doing, like the new, you know, $50,000 or $60,000 Rottler or Sun and Hones have, you can end up doing a few different things. So as you're honing up and down, you can end up making it barrel shaped or hourglass shaped, so it could be big on the top, big on the bottom, big on the top and the bottom, little in the middle, or it could be little on the top, little on the bottom, and big in the middle. So, and it's knowing how to compensate. So what you do is you dwell to get it even. I'm just telling to people that I've had a bunch of people want me to go more in depth on honing and boring, which is why I'm doing this right now. So what you do, stuff like that, when you get in those situations, is you can use a shorter stone. So if you see, this is a standard 4-inch stone. It's got an inch removed from it. So by doing that, you're actually using a smaller surface area. So that way you can dwell it in certain spots. So like, let's say the middle was bigger. You could stall it in the middle and just move in the middle a little bit for a second, then go up and down with longer strokes to even it out. Using these are considered keyway type stones, so which they were really originally designed for doing bores that had a keyway cut in them. So you can see there's 2 stones instead of 1, which on these big engines that have massive exhaust ports, it's very easy to snag a port with a stone, which is why I use them. But also using them, you have more stone surface, so it's less likely to end up getting barrel or hourglass shaped. So just a little helpful hint. Now that I said that, I forgot where I'm at though. 3, 4.5, 4.5. All right, so this one's basically done. We gotta go back over here. It's always easier to double check. Four. Five, perfect. Five, perfect. Alrighty, so now we're going to go to the next stone. 6 and 6. Just under 6. Just under 6. So we gotta just do a smidge. Go. Check that. Should be good, but 6 on the money. 6 on the money. Now the other thing when you're checking it, which it really doesn't matter until the final one, but as you're putting a bunch of pressure, you can put a good amount of heat into the cylinder, which can actually give you a false reading. So what I do is I'll hone it all the way to the last. Then when I'm done with the last one, I'll just let the oil, I'll check it real quick, and then I'll just let the oil run on it for, 10 minutes so that whatever temperature is in the bore gets out of it and everything's cool. And then I do the last check of the measurement. A lot of times it'll actually shrink a little bit. So, and it's easier to know that before you have the whole thing cleaned and you're ready to start assembling, and you notice, uh-oh, this thing's a little bit too small. Alright, so let's dump whatever oil is out of this. There we go. So pretty. Maybe I can do this over here. So one of the first things I do, chamfering everything. One of the first things I do, chamfering everything. I use a chamfer disc and a drill. All you're doing is breaking this top edge. This edge gets really sharp from honing it and boring it. And it can actually lead to hot spots and detonation. So you can use a standard deburr tool like, there we go. Use a standard deburr tool like this, just go around. You can use a diamond burr like I use and go around. Some people even just use the ball hone and just go up and down to make sure, but you want to make sure that this sharp edge is taken care of. So let's go over by the porting bench now. Bleeding. The other nice thing with chamfering this the way I do is if for some reason you nick the cylinder, which obviously you don't want to do, because we're still going to remove 1/2 thousandth as long as you're gentle with everything. Also, I've had a bunch of people ask me, this isn't sponsored or anything, all this stuff I bought myself, but CC Specialties sells this porting stand, which is also great for chamfering ports. Awesome company, they have all the different porting tools I use, stuff like that. But these stands are, I think, like 150 bucks, but man, they're so worth it. You know, I do everything from big block Chevy LS cylinder heads to, you know, little 125s. As you can see, it's super quick and easy to rotate and move. All right, time to go back in the hone. All right, let's finish her on up. Quick clamps in. So now you saw I had chamfered it with a diamond tool. You want to make sure you use a diamond tool, not a carbide burr, because a carbide burr will leave burrs, which is kind of what you're just trying not to do. Now by going in with a ball hone, we're also chamfering the chamfer, so making it smoother, radiusing everything and giving it a nice finish, top, bottom, everywhere. And then we'll go back and we'll finish it with the fine stone. Also, I like to go a couple seconds in one direction and a couple seconds in the other. That way you're chamfering both sides of the port. Check it out. Nice, perfect crosshatch. Ready to rock and roll. So, as always, guys, please like, share, subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. You guys have a good day.